The Witch King of Angmar was a fearsome lieutenant and second-in-command to the Dark Lord Sauron until he met his end at the Battle of Penla Fields. But who exactly is the Witch King?
Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master.
Do you not know death when you see it, old man? This is my power.
The Witch King was one of the original 9 kings who received one of Sauron's 9 rings of power that he gave to man. Now, as we see, these rings corrupt the wearer, particularly humans who are very susceptible to it. The rings brought the king's fame, wealth and power. However, Sauron gained more and more control over them over time, and eventually they were transformed into wraiths. Invisible to most of the world, they now only existed to serve Sauron and were directly linked to him. Essentially, they're an extension of Sauron's power. They're no longer alive and they rely on Sauron to be able to interact with the mortal plane. During Sauron's height of power in the Second Era, the Witch King and the Nazgul led many of Sauron's armies up until his defeat in the War of the Last Alliance, where the Witch King and the Nazgul both disappeared with their master as he was no longer strong enough to sustain them. It wasn't until the Third Era, over 1,000 years later, when a mysterious sorcerer known as the Necromancer emerged, who was actually Sauron in disguise, and as he secretly grew in power, the Lord of the Nazgul was able to return, eager to serve. He first appeared near the northern realm of Arnor. While Sauron continued to grow in power, the Witch King began a campaign to weaken the northern kingdoms of men. He created his own kingdom of Angmar, rallying all of the dark creatures that longed for Sauron's return to his side. The realm of Arnor was divided into 3 kingdoms, Arthandain, R'dur and Cardolan. The Witch King would attack all 3, and his reputation for being a fierce sorcerer gained him the name the Witch King of Angmar. He and his forces managed to take the kingdoms of R'dur and Cardolan until only Arthandain stood to resist him in the northern realm, and this was largely due to the aid of the elves of Rivendell. After hundreds of years of war, the Witch King took the third and final kingdom and had totally conquered the realm. However, his victory was short-lived when a Gondorian general named Erna invaded Arnor. At the Battle of Fornost, the Witch King challenged the general to a duel. However, after sensing that the battle was futile, the Witch King chose to flee. And as the general attempted to pursue him, he was told this: "Do not pursue him. He will not return to these lands. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man shall he fall." This prophecy, of course, turned out to be true, as he was not killed by man in the end. Now, the Witch King left Angmar never to return. He had, after all, succeeded. The Northern Realms were a mere shadow of their former glory. His kingdom of Angmar soon collapsed, however, the Witch King was needed elsewhere. By this point, Sauron had become powerful enough that the other 8 Nazgul had re-emerged, and he tasked them with rebuilding his armies in Mordor. Gathering hordes of orcs, they eventually began assaulting Gondor itself, and they managed to take Minas Ithil and renamed it to Minas Morgul, or Tower of Dark Sorcery. Eventually, the Gondorian general Erna became king of Gondor, and the Witch King saw this as an opportunity to cripple the kingdom of men. He challenged the king to a duel, and the king accepted. Now, not much is known about what happened. King Erna entered the gates of Minas Morgul and never returned. He was the last king of Gondor, and it's why Gondor is ruled by the Stuarts in The Lord of the Rings. For 400 years, a somewhat cold war happened between Gondor and Mordor. Gondor believing that the Witch King was the true threat, all the while Sauron and his minions were growing in strength. Eventually, Sauron returned to Mordor, and through the torture of Gollum, discovered that the One Ring of Power was still in existence, and he tasked the Nazgul with finding it. It was the Witch King who interrogated Wormtongue into telling him of the land of the Halflings and where the Shire was, and it was the Witch King who would take Osgiliath in preparation for the assault on Minas Tirith, and it was the Witch King who injured Frodo on Weathertop. The Nazgul would do anything to serve their master. Now, we know what happens from here. The Witch King was chosen as Sauron's champion to lead his armies, and he's incredibly formidable at that. He who had the ability to set objects on fire. Using his dark magic, he was surrounded by an aura of fear that made even trained soldiers flee before him. As well as this, any weapon that pierced him would explode, and the wielder would be agonised with a deadly poison. Now, like many of Sauron's forces, he was more powerful at night. He was able to use his magic to weaken the gates of Minas Tirith, which is how the orcs' battering ram managed to infiltrate it. Ultimately, when he was defeated, much of Sauron's army was in disarray, and it marked a defeat at the Battle of Penla Fields. However, the Witch King hadn't been alive for thousands of years. His existence was almost totally reliant on Sauron's span of power, suggesting that one day he could return if his master was able to. But what do you think of the Witch King of Angmar? Thanks for watching. If you want more Lord of the Rings content, please show some support below. Also, please do remember to follow me on Twitter at @TheLoreGuy for regular updates. Thanks for watching, I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.